Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Good to see you, Daniel.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing very well, and we have a little bit of international politics to talk about. There's a meeting coming up in Canada, up in Quebec, and Donald Trump is invited. He's going to go. It's the G7 meeting. I don't know if you got your invitation or not. I didn't get mine.
I'll be there.
So you're going to, but anyway, I guess they don't invite people like us that want to deal with the issues. But you know, the G7 is interesting. It's been around now, you know, since 1973. A good old Republican Nixon got it all started. You know, I keep thinking about all the things that get started under the Republicans, you know, things like this and the war on drugs and of course the Plunge Protection Team was started by Reagan in 1987. So the Republicans actually don't stand up to this big government stuff. But this is international government that they brought together the 7 most important, you know, countries to meet and talk about economic matters. But if you look at it, it turns out to be they don't deal with substance. They deal with fluff and politics and propaganda, and they try to sway markets and things. But this year, there is being painted as something very, very different. It's Donald Trump against the world. And under these circumstances that stand here, the mediocre seriousness of all this, I would say under these conditions with the whole world and these actually, they say 7 countries against Trump because they claim there's too many Americans that don't like his tariffs. And they're going to talk about tariffs. But they're going to come down hard on him, is what the story is. But quite frankly, I think that Donald Trump will love it. He's going to have his day because there's nothing he likes better than to be criticized, and because he can come back and they don't know what to say. I understand that he was on the phone with the Prime Minister of Canada,
Trudeau, yeah.
Trudeau, and he says, and the story is that in talking about this, and Trudeau doesn't like Trump so well right now because Canada's going to suffer from these tariffs. So the story goes that Trump said, hey, wait a minute, Mr. Prime Minister, I don't know about this, but you guys burned down our White House in 1812, and we're still act off about it. So, and I was telling you earlier, I said, can you imagine what that poor guy, wonder what he had to say? We never heard anything. I said, to be brought up and blamed for burning down the White House, and Canada was part of course, of Great Britain at the time. So anyway, the prediction of fireworks and the stirring up, my assumption will be nothing serious will come of it all because they won't even talk about the serious problem. They're going to talk about tariffs and sanctions and all, but I don't think they're going to come up with a solution. But I do predict that the ritual says that at the end they have to show unity, and they are doing something. So they will have a statement. Trudeau has already, indicated, well, if it doesn't say something about these tariffs, I'm not going to sign it. My assumption is they'll probably find something, you know, water it down, and I even think that Trump very well, like what he does, he puts up a good fight, and then he gives a little bit, and they'll have something done, and they're going to have agreement, and the world will go marching on down to the depths of this economy, because I don't think they're going to touch on it, on what the real problems are. So we're going to keep an eye on this. They're going to meet Friday and Saturday, and it'll be in the news Friday and Saturday. Maybe that's because the markets won't be open at the end of Friday nor Saturday to see. But the markets will go up and down in response, but they're not going to change the economy. And they're probably not going to change Trump's opinions about how to run the world.
You know, even if some of these things we may agree with the Europeans, what they're upset about, it's hard not to root for Trump in a situation like this because of all of his faults. I think one of the things that's most attractive about him is his ability to wrong foot all of these goofy foreign leaders, socialist foreign leaders. But here's Bloomberg's list of particulars why they're so furious with Trump. Pulled out of their climate change deal. That drove him crazy. Canceled U.S. participation in the Iran deal. Ignited a global trade conflict. We haven't even seen the full extent of that yet. And attacked Europe for not spending more on the military. That's what the Europeans are mad at. they're predicting that Merkel is going to challenge him on every issue. I'd love to see, I would pay to sit there and see her trying to read him the riot act and see what his response is.
Well, the president's economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, somebody I've known for a while, and his beliefs are reasonable. You know, he describes himself as a free market capitalist, but he bends a bit too. And I was a little bit surprised that he did, but it's not surprising to find out when you get an invitation, I can be, you know, on the president's team. So he's with him, but I think he's sort of already dancing because I don't think he has any liking at all for tariffs. I think some of these people that get involved because they say, well, maybe we can tune them down and control them. And that may be true on some, but I don't think that's necessarily true under the circumstances of working for Trump. I think if he's made up his mind that tariffs are the way to go, I think he's going to stick with those. And even though he's up and down and nobody knows exactly where he stands, I don't think that he's all of a sudden going to give up and say, you know, I sort of made a mistake. This tariff war isn't working out so well for us. And but I think Larry's going to have to, you know, give some endorsements, but go along with it too often.
It'll be interesting to see what he does. You know, I was researching a little bit. I was cheating. I was looking on Wikipedia, figuring out what's up with the G7. We've all heard it. But you can forget the origins easily. And I was going to throw this at you to see what you thought. It's kind of interesting. The G7 was born, as you point out, in the early 70s, and it was born to help coordinate economic initiatives in response to the global shock of Nixon closing the gold window. Isn't that interesting? Talk about interesting unintended consequences.
Yeah, a lot of people were worried down the IMF, and everybody was very much involved because that, of course, I've talked about it for a long time. That was a very big deal. And, of course, it disrupted the currencies. Instead of having a currency theoretically tied to the dollar at a fixed rate, all of a sudden, all these fiat currencies were floating. And that was very, very disruptive. So they didn't know what to expect. And matter of fact, I think it lasted and it survived a lot longer than a lot of people believed because it was able to produce a society where they could depend on America's wealth and America's dollar. And now the world is very dependent on that. I saw just recently Indonesia wants to say they were critical of us trying to get the monetary policy in order. They say, well, you're winding down. That might mean you're going to raise interest rates and probably hurt the value of the dollar, all this management stuff. And so they were hoping that we wouldn't do that, that we would keep inflating, which is rather strange. Before, if you were on a gold standard, or even under the pseudo-gold standard, you didn't have any of this. You didn't have futures markets on the currencies and all because they were all the currencies were based on gold. But I could imagine very much. But I would say that even though the system has lasted for a long, long time, my argument is all they have done is they built this horrendous, malinvestment. They took a problem they were worrying about correctly, but now because it's been held together and they coordinate and they concede so much to us because they have conceded the whole idea that we can print the gold. And then they wonder why there's trade imbalances. Why should we work and earn the money to go and buy stuff from China and other places? We can just print the money. And of course there's going to be trade imbalances. We're going to spend more money over there. We're going to buy more of their stuff. If we had to earn that money, it would be a different story. There would be a much better balance. So they had a right to worry, but I would say they're totally unsuccessful and drifted over toward more social issues and environmentalism and climate control and things like that, which they've accomplished nothing.
And the continuing on Wikipedia, they said, and this is why there's nothing to get too excited about the G7. Starting in 1999, they decided to get more involved in directly managing the international monetary system. So not anything to get too excited about there.
No, and it's the mismanagement of the monetary system that has brought us to the brink of trade war. See, trade war it always comes as a consequence of imbalances in currencies, imbalances in trade. So the trade war shouldn't surprise anybody, and it surprises me a little bit that everybody, it seems, or so many people have drifted toward accepting this, and Trump is, in ways, some places, a hero. But now we have the objection coming not from the free market. Never in all this process, even during Bretton Woods and all, nobody really talks about sound money and free market. So they went along with this, and now the chaos is there, and the consequence is these trade wars. We can solve the problems by sanctions. I'm a little bit surprised that Trump can get away with this. And the one thing, there's the announcement, we are the strongest and the richest, and we have the best economy in the whole world, but everybody's cheating us, and therefore we have to punish you, and we're going to do this. We need a better trade deal. It's almost like we're doing the best, better than anybody else, but you guys are going to get punished. Why? Because we're doing so well and we have this power. But what's going to happen is that eventually the confidence in the dollar will be lost. And I do think the dollar is even here, I don't know whether there will be a consequence of this meeting, but the dollar will resume going down once again, and you can't measure the dollar against other currencies. You measure the dollar against gold and purchasing power, and that's all going to change, and that's why most people are recognizing now that there's going to be inflation. If they were dealing with monetary policy and serious problem, they'd be dealing with the dollar standard, inflation, the business cycle, the malinvestment, debt. They're not even going to touch that.
Yeah.
They're just going to say, keep it going, and it'll last forever. This is a new era.
A new era. Whenever you start getting down on Trump and you feel bad about his kooky foreign policy and all of his dumb neocons, you just have to look at his enemies to make you a little bit more sympathetic.
Yeah, that's right.
And here's one that I followed for a long time, and he's a real annoyance, is the former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen. And he's quoted, I think, in the Bloomberg piece, going off on Trump. He said, quote, "Trump is a fully fledged isolationist who's opened the door for Putin and Xi to play a bigger role on the world stage." And he continued, "The world is on fire. Wherever you look, we have conflicts. Now you are lacking American leadership, and this is why autocrats have a more easy game to play." But if the world really is on fire, it's the U.S. has been lighting the fires, the U.S. global leadership. Look at Syria, Ukraine, Libya, and elsewhere. So it's kind of like the arsonist complaining about all the fire damage everywhere.
Yeah, I think what you point out is the destruction of words, the meanings of words. Because here we are, we have an empire. We're the super globalists, and we brag about it, and we're everywhere. And we have the control of the monetary, the financial system. Anybody who crosses us, we just put sanctions on. They have trouble working in the banking system. And be called an isolationist?
Yeah,
I mean, it makes no sense, So I think a little more isolations will help, but we don't call ourselves isolationists. We call ourselves non-interventionists. Matter of fact, we're very much for trade and travel and these sorts of things on a voluntary basis,
yeah,
and not on a coercive basis, and not punishing people and not threatening people, and not getting involved in so many wars going on, and seeing that military spending as a boost to the economy. Yeah. All these are fallacies which have misled us into this situation where this debt is so horrendous, much bigger than $21 trillion. It's probably $200 to $300 trillion when you look up all the assets. Now they're talking about right now, maybe they're admitting that this bankruptcy of Medicaid is going to come much sooner than they ever thought.
Yeah.
And I don't think they'll be dealing with the cost of medical care up there and why that happens and why we spend too much overseas, and maybe we could have a better system here at home.
Yeah, that's true. And there's another quote that should give us a little bit of enthusiasm. It's not meant to sound that way. It's all of the globalists are furious about Trump's go-it-alone attitude. But here's Ian Bremmer of the Eurasia Group, and I think this is a great quote, although it's supposed to show how terrible Trump is. It said, "The old order is over. What we're fighting for over now is as the new order emerges is whether the U.S. wants to have the most important seat at the table or not. Right now, the answer is no." Great. That's fantastic. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah, that's it. But I'm not expecting that they're going to solve any problems. There's going to be a lot of grandstanding, a lot of fancy speeches. I think everybody's going to have to be tough. Tough and nasty and playing to the world audience, because they will get attention. And if you take a socialist authoritarian, he can't come home and look like a wimp.
Yeah.
being pushed around by this non-socialist isolationist Trump. So they're going to pound on him. I think they will, but I think they'll lose it. I don't think they'll accomplish that. He's an expert at this, and I think he proved it the first night of the first debate that he had when he ran for president. He was in charge of that thing immediately and had the stage ever since. So this is you're going to hear a lot. You'll hear tough words from Trump, tough words from the other ones. To sound like so vicious. It could get out of hand. So even though I'm sort of leaning on saying not much is going to happen, so maybe you will antagonize 1, 2, or 3. And if they did, and it got personal, and they wouldn't sign some kind of pseudo pretend agreement at the end, that could have some ramifications. But I think they'll play the world stage, and they can look at home and look at what I told Trump. We stood up to him, but Trump will carry the day. That'll be the news. And if anybody challenges him, he says, "I'm going to Twitter about you. If you don't behave, I'm going to Twitter about you, or I'm going to put tariffs on you. I'm going to put sanctions on you. I'll bomb you if you don't do it." I didn't know I had so much power as president, and if you treat me right, I'll give you a pardon, which I like. Matter of fact, the ones so far, the pardons aren't a bad idea. I love this idea of victimless crime people getting pardoned. Somebody was complaining about him giving a pardon to the lady that had a lifetime sentence for a non-violent drug dealer. He says, "Well, you shouldn't do that. There are thousands in there and they're being mistreated." Fine.
Yeah. Let them go.
Give them all a pardon if they've been nonviolent. And this whole idea about the drug war, matter of fact, that could be a worthy thing to study, or talk at a meeting like this. What can we do on curtailing this? Because Trump's involved in that because of trade. We're going to go to that border, and our borders are so vulnerable, Mexico, which we sure have heard a lot about, and those terrible, terrible drug dealers. Well, if they were all legal, there's nobody down there carrying beer over the border.
Yeah.
Is there? You can go to the drugstore and buy beer.
Bring your own.
So, but if you want something else, you got to go down there and subsidize the drug dealers. So that kind of stuff, I think, would be a worthy discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to end by doing something I don't do often enough, which is to thank our live viewers as kind of a great little team of people who get together as like a coffee clutch, and that's we appreciate you. We run into you whenever we go out, wherever we go to conferences, and we really appreciate you watching it, and I hope you'll share and have more people subscribe to our YouTube. I also want to bring up again our conference. We just talked about it the last couple of days, August 18th. We've got a great lineup already. We're putting more people on the queue. But it's ronpaulinstitute.org/conference for more information. Dr. Paul is going to be a speaker. What more reason do you need to go? If you need any more enticement, Lou Rockwell is going to be there. We also have other great people. Ray McGovern is going to be there. Remember, he was beat up trying to protest Gina Haspel's nomination. He's going to let us know what happened when he was there. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson is going to be there. He's on our board. One of the most eloquent anti-war voices you will find anywhere. We are really looking forward to having him back. He was at our 16 conference and very popular. So grab your tickets soon, get the early bird rate, save a little bit of money, and we will really look forward to seeing you in August.
Very good. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in today, and I want to emphasize the fact that although this little report was a little bit on the light side, it is very serious. I think it's all propaganda malinvestment. Just as you spend money in the wrong places when you have low interest rates, I think some of this propaganda stuff is all misdirected. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be talking to people, like I indicated in the program, that maybe we ought to talk about, why the borders could be different if we didn't have this war on drugs. There's so many things that could be talked about. It could be an academic seminar, but they do not bring up the things that I think and libertarians think and free market people think. And that is that how does the business cycle work? Why is the monetary policy important? Why is sound money better than fiat money? Why do we need central banking? And why is it that you have one country that can get so powerful and become the dictator of the world and have the empire because they can get to print the the paper gold. So all these things are important, but unfortunately, all you see at a meeting like this is fluff and propaganda, and it is a shame. It'll be interesting to watch, but let's hope that there will be a few items in there that will make people stop and think, well, maybe there is a better way. Maybe we don't need managed trade and fair trade and NAFTA and WTOs and all these organizations are supposed to regulate the economy. In a free market, the people regulate the economy. They buy and sell, and they have voluntary arrangement. And guess what the result is? Peace and prosperity. So that is our goal, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report.